Hello, everyone. So I'm Jérémy, the founder of Collectiv Food. Just maybe in short, before we kick off, we try and define ourselves as kind of the future of food distribution. We've been working for the past 4 years on trying to create a much more transparent model in terms of how restaurants, professional kitchens can reconnect to producers and the source of food, and how we make the data and the traceability available to these customers. But most importantly, how we tackle really complex logistics challenges on making daily deliveries fresh every morning to a restaurant like Juliette's restaurant in cities which are really changing with new regulations. And the biggest challenge for us was trying not to reproduce that model of one stop after another, the system of La Tournée, and how we can be much more efficient and smart in how we bring these products to our customers on a daily basis. So based in London, but we've expanded to France about 8 months ago, and we're lucky to have Juliette and Cali sisters as one of our customers. And I think the synergies, and you'll talk more about it, is really a big focus on social impact, but also finding the right products and as close as possible to you, and also a big focus on CO2 emissions. And I guess that's where transportation plays a big part in it. That's it for me.
Hi everyone, I'm Juliette. With my sister, we co-founded Cali Sisters, which is a group of 2 restaurants right now in Paris.
When were they created? When did you launch them?
2 years ago.
3 years ago.
3 years ago, they actually opened. They were supposed to open on the first day of the first confinement, and so they opened on the day after the first confinement, when everything reopened.
And just before, when did you launch your startup?
2018, so it's about...
2018 and...
2020.
Well, okay, interesting.
And the second one in 2021. Right after second
Very
confinement.
gutsy, huh?
Well, we're trying. And so yes, we opened those 2 Californian restaurants based on what we loved in California, which is first and foremost the common sense in everything they do, meaning having a bottom-up approach of what are the producers available, and let's use them and think seasonal, think local, think care, think kindness. And this is what we tried to import with our restaurants. Doing so in Paris, it means doing the best we can in terms of sourcing and in terms of logistics. And right now, to actually respond to Jérémy, is that you can try as much as you can to have the best sourcing possible, to source in France, to source even more locally. But if it's not sustained by some sustainable logistics, actually, it's not worth making all those efforts if you're going to pollute in the last mile so much.
Right, no, happy to chat about it. I think it's it was actually the biggest challenge we had in the early days, because fundamentally when we started Collectiv Food, it was all about reconnecting, chefs and kitchens with the producers, and you quickly realize that great to make these connections, but if you don't have the logistics solution in between, it doesn't really help anyone in the marketplace. And we started more as a pure marketplace and really quickly shifted as actually we really need to tackle that supply chain. And a lot of companies have been focusing either like really on the products or too much on the last mile. And actually, I think our strength is that we have an understanding of the full supply chain, basically. And maybe just to deep dive on how we're different on that model, just to give some perspective. But a traditional wholesaler is big warehouses, and every morning you have your fleet of trucks leaving your warehouse, doing one stop after another. The more customers you have, the more trucks you had on the streets, you have all routine complexities, and most importantly, when you start focusing on your customers, like Juliette, the customer experience is pretty bad. So yes, you deliver your first customers at the beginning of the day and they're happy, but all the others are really impacted, and actually, calling, my order is late, or the products are not being delivered. And in a restaurant or as a chef, a slight delay has a huge impact. It's kind of a snowball effect immediately for your day or even your week. And I think what we've created as a model is that we've tried to reconcile both the customer experience, so how can we deliver as many customers as we want exactly at the same time within, let's say, a 30 minutes delivery window in the future at scale, with a model which at the same time can really bring carbon neutrality and better peace in cities. Less trucks, less congestion, less noise, less disruptions. And that's kind of the picture of the model you can see here. We've done that by deploying pods, what we call the pods, which are refrigerated containers on underused space in the city. So we have the support of the city of Paris, for example, here in France. There is a lot of space under bridges, on friches, next to the peripheric. So a lot of spaces that people don't really want to use, which are really strategic in terms of how you can then deliver products within the heart of the city. And so we load them at night with the orders already prepared from our warehouse. And early in the morning, we have totally autonomously cargo bikes, electric vans that come on site, collect the orders, and go to Juliette in 15 minutes, avoiding traffic congestion and avoiding also CO2 emissions. So that's the key differentiator of the model, which has been really working well and hopefully bringing some positive to you also.
Yes, definitely. Actually, before opening these two restaurants, I used to work at Terroir d'Avenir, which is a supplier that works with very well, with actually producers that have very well farming methods, very good farming methods, very good quality products. And what they liked is that they used to have the best products in France and agglomerate them, but they would deliver with trucks and get spend hours in traffic, and I would be on the logistics side of it and get all the restaurants screaming and getting crazy at this way of doing. And I think one great news with COVID is that there was one.
Multiple. Actually, this
Multiple,
is what
but
is helping solve plenty of problems which we knew we had to solve, and now we have to solve.
yeah, it definitely accelerated, I think, global awareness in terms of what we used to do so bad and how we need to do better and right now. And that's how we came to actually choose Collectiv Food as one of our suppliers, is that we can't just source good, we need to think of the logistics that go with it, because it's a global ecosystem, and if you just tackle one of its components, it doesn't work, and it won't work in the future. And it comes at a time where consumers are actually more and more demanding of that kind of impact that's taken the whole ecosystem in account. They do have demands about how you source your products, where, how it's delivered. You would be surprised at how many people ask us if we get the products from California because we are a Californian
First question I asked.
Yes, we don't.
You don't.
No, we take the Californian approach to it and source locally. But then again, we need to have more and more actors that take the whole chain into account.
So since we did not practice at all, so I'm going to barge in each time with questions. So what you're talking about, we're going to go through the customer journey. So you are making an order. He gets the order. He tackles. So it's like a dark store, isn't it?
Not really. I think it's from the customer, it's almost like a traditional wholesaler or supplier, except that we bring automation and tools. We'll touch on it really quickly. So everything is streamlined and easy. We integrate to their own systems, but then we bring, I guess, the better customer experience, better data, better traceability and transparency on what comes behind that, basically. So we're not just catalog based. Okay, you're just ordering a chicken or something. You don't have that big truck coming in front of your restaurant just for 2 cases of products. I think it's the overall model and experience which comes with it, basically.
There is that other component to Collectiv Food, which is very interesting now. As I said, customers, clients are very much more in demand of traceability, and us, of course, but traceability about the products that you have on your menu, and having that ability to access that information and knowing about the products that you order without the darkness that can, with other suppliers, that you really have to dig deep if you want to know about where it was farmed, how it was raised, where it got...
So he knows about this. You ask, you say, I want chicken, and he delivers chicken which has a certain cahier des charges, which is going to be, it's bio, it's local, and so on and so forth. Is that right?
Yeah, I think the foundation of the model initially is really about to reconnect passionate people. I think you have to be highly passionate to be a producer or a farmer. It's super hard. You have to be highly passionate to be a restaurant owner or a chef. And somehow we've totally lost that relationship and connection over time. and also the understanding of where the product comes from or how it's been produced. And I guess our role here is trying to reconcile these. We put them in touch. We have tools, tech tools here that we've developed where they can actually see the data points on the producers they want to work with, what's their commitment towards sustainability, what's their impact. We have our CO2 kind of calculation tool where they can track CO2 emissions with each of their orders. So with the consumer trends or requirements changing, we're trying to help them also showcase, what Juliette or their efforts they can make towards sustainability. And for now, it's been always like, yeah, great sustainability, but there is no data points or any ways of putting that forward. And I think we're trying to help them, for free. It's part of our kind of model and how we operate, trying to give them the tools also to showcase that and communicate about it. And I guess as a differentiator against other restaurants or competitors.
Okay, now I understand better. So you have a high role. You are not just, I go, I pick up things and I deliver and I put it next to a, yeah, it's important for me to understand, like everybody needs to understand, because then I understand. Do you have, as a startup, like a patent that is going to protect all the things that you are doing?
So you can't patent the model itself, but we did have a patent in the UK, Europe, and across the world on the pods, which are basically, I don't know if we have real pictures of them, which are basically these. We've patented basically the technology which is behind that. So yes, it's initially just a container, but it's all the redesigning of the container, multi-compartments, remote access system, temperature controls, all the technology which goes behind. There is a lot of work and engineering that has been patented. So yes, we have a protection over that piece. And I guess if you try to reproduce a model where you decentralize your supply chain, either you would go to warehouses within the city, could be small dark stores and things, highly competitive, big distribution for neighbors, noisy and stuff, or you would need something like a mobile unit, which are pods. And I guess, yeah, that would be a missing component in you trying to reproduce the model. The rest is years of passion and innovation and hard work, but not patented as so.
Don't you have a hard time with cities telling you, don't put it here, don't put it here?
Yes, but actually, so yes and no, because we're using underused space in cities. So that could be under a bridge, that could be big parking spaces. It's basically spaces, it could be a wet space that no one wants to use. For us, it's perfect. So no disruption to the neighbors. And we have a big support from cities, actually. So they're regulating more and more on, we don't want trucks anymore, we don't want pollution anymore. We want to streamline freight into the city, and they don't have any ideas on how to do it. We're currently working hard towards the Olympics. We're trying to be a key player in the Olympics in Paris. You have to think about the volume of food that's going to be distributed for the Olympics, and no one has any clue on how they're going to do that. It's Paris will be a bunker, so it won't be like just big trucks every day doing a tournée in Paris. That's going to be impossible. So we're trying to see actually if putting these spots close to the Jardin Olympique and others could be a place of refurbishment at night, and then you have beautiful bikes, cargo bikes, doing the last mile to the food outlets. So it's we have a big support actually, including in London, from cities, because they want things to change, and that could be part of the solution.
Did you want to add something, Juliette? No? Yes?
No, on the...
Can you go back on the slide right before? Because then we were starting with the one before? You started by talking about, so where did you want to go on?
Sorry, can you just repeat?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes, please.
So you started saying what you were doing from the producers to the last mile.
Yes.
And then we went to the next slide. Did you have anything else to say about this?
No, I think it was just to illustrate the model and how we've decoupled our supply chain.
Okay. Yep. All right. So thank you.
I guess we've covered what I wanted to share here around the tech tools we've built. It's a bit counterintuitive, but the biggest team in our team are software engineers, and they work hard on building internal tools to automate and streamline our operations and make that more efficient and reliable, but also working more and more on customer-facing tool on how to support Juliette in growing its business and being more competitive.
Yes, I do think that it's important to have more and more suppliers, and there are more and more of them that have the whole, I think, CSR, is it CSR? Yes, CSR experience in mind, building the business model, meaning you can't just, it's the logistics, it's the producers themselves, and it's the impact they have more generally. And this is about people, and this is about waste, and there's many elements to this CSR approach. And I think it's very important to have more businesses that keep it in mind while building the where they're gonna do business. And I think Collectiv Food is pretty much general and holistic approach in this department.
Yeah, because if you have multiple customers, then you've got multiple customers to serve in one truck, right? So do you have a software that optimizes the routes, how to deliver? Is there a priority? Do I need a premium because I want to be first? How does it work?
So the vision and the beauty of the model is actually that we can have as many single trips we want from the pod to the restaurant than that we want. So instead of having from your warehouse a truck that would do like a 10-hour shift, one restaurant then the other, and the customer experience is pretty bad, from a pod we can deploy 20 cargo bikes that's going to do just one trip to the restaurant in 15 minutes, and that's it. So the beauty of the model is actually, and the vision of the model is to get to a stage where we can deliver every customer we want exactly at the same time. So we remove the système de la tournée in French, the complexity of routing. We don't have routing tools. We don't have to think about a mapping of, who's going to be first and second. The idea here is that you can just spread it as you want, everyone at the same time.
That reminds me of a tool. Do you hire everybody from Uber and all deliveries, all those people who know how to do all those things? How does it work?
Good question, and I know it's really important for Juliette, the social impact. We work with operators that actually have their own fleet of cargo bikes or electric vans, and we have strict selection process in terms of suppliers on do they hire them, what's the contribution, what's the policy they have towards their drivers. So we've been quite selective, and then we train them because it's a very important touch point between us and our customers to make sure they smile, little things, but smile, ask for feedback. It's really a touch point with our customers, so it's very important.
And it's important for both of you to get that data back as well, right, Juliette?
Yes, very important. I think it's very important that everyone helps other businesses improve the way they do things, especially young businesses. I know I read reviews from my customers every morning in my bed, and I'm sure, and Julien and Jérémy have come up to me many times now to understand.
Now the question is, who is Julien?
The other founder.
Oh, he's a man. Hi, Julien. How are you? Do you want to step in afterwards, or feel comfortable? If you want to come and join the conversation, feel free.
Yes, so I do think that it's not about incriminating. It's about finding our fragile points to each and every one of us to have them improve, especially when there's a young market. So for Collectiv Food, it's going to mean Paris. For me, my restaurants are pretty young as well, so I do hear all the feedbacks in order to improve my product. And yes, especially on this subject, which is people and impact and logistics and sourcing, which are so not trending, but very, very much of they have to be our priority. It's very important to always think about how we can do better, and there's not one way. And so you need to work with people who don't have only one way in mind. You need to be working with this is them.
And I agree. This is how we're changing the world, is basically through people like you who are going to make it happen, and people who are going to follow you. And this is how you make a difference. There was another question. So you're delivering food, and let me ask, and we haven't practiced, so it comes like this. Then you're doing your food at the end, and you've got waste, right? Is there waste that you could give back to Collectiv Food, who would then go back and feed another company who needs those waste so that they come back as raw material? Because these waste have been, used with electricity, water, and we're short on materials. Could it be as a second version?
Well, I do think logistics in a business is already a pretty big thing, and adding some new subject on top of it is pretty big. So I'm speaking for Jérémy here, but they're all brands, they're all actually companies that take care in a very smart way of the waste you can have as a restaurant. And they actually build the company on this. So
one to you to another.
Yeah, I think for us the important is we work on the sustainability side of things. We work on things that we can measure and when we can really estimate our impact. So right now it's been about transparency, traceability, and CO2 emissions. Next might be waste, but maybe from more like a farm and producer perspective where there is a huge amount of waste. I think when it reaches the restaurant and they actually start cooking it, or it starts to be a bit difficult to circle back. But I guess there are companies where you can donate dishes that haven't been eaten, or we do give to charity ourselves as a business. If we have some waste, in France it goes to Resto du Cœur. So we have some ways of contributing to the community also. But I guess our impact is a bit upward in the chain, I guess, not the output from the restaurant.
And also, as far as my restaurants are concerned, we don't have that much waste. To be honest, if you order reasonably and you cook reasonably and you have the right portions and the right way of doing things and the right way of the right menu engineering that enables you to use different aspects of the products in different plates, then you don't have that much of an issue. And if you have volume, then it's.
And this is something you could communicate on, which is whatever we don't have left, then we will recook something using whatever we have left.
For my restaurants, we do have quite a few
what do you sell?
To...
What do we find in a Californian restaurant?
We find meatballs, we find gnudi, which are like kind of ricotta gnudi, and we have
Look how her smile starts.
We have so many things because Californian food is very, very much multi-ethnical. Like it gets inspired from pretty different, like from Mexico, from Italian food, French food, classic American comfort food.
How did the idea of that restaurant come? Because you're French, you're in Paris, and you're selling food coming from California. How did it start?
Well, actually, my sister and I my grandparents lived there, my parents lived there in California, and my sister and I traveled there many, many times, and we just fell in love with it. So the best way, as we didn't want to leave Paris, it's still, at least not now, we decided to import that in France.
Can you remind us where the restaurants are?
Place de la Bourse in the 2nd arrondissement and Rue de Paradis in the 10th arrondissement.
So you send a message to Juliette, you say, you know what, I'm coming to try your food. She'll welcome you, open the door, and you'll feel just like home.
Yes, you're very much welcome to do so.
Fantastic. How about you? How did the idea of that startup got started?
Really quickly, but I was, before my job at Collectiv Food, I was a forensic accountant, so I was always passionate.
An accountant.
Yes, but forensic. So I was really focusing on fighting corruption, mainly in African countries. So I was always passionate about ethics and how businesses are actually doing business. And my last job was in the UK, investigating Tesco, the big group of supermarkets.
Oh, you had a lot of things to do there.
Yes, and it was 2 years of immersion within that kind of food retail, food wholesale side of things, to discover that pretty much everything was inefficient, some mispractices, opacity. And I think that was the trigger for me to quit my job back then and combine two passions around ethics and food. And that's how Collectiv Food, after some time in the kitchen, came to life, basically.
I love it. Very nice.
And then you navigate, I guess.
Yeah. Follow your passion. Does any of you have any question for the moment? Yeah, thank you.
Hi, I just didn't understand whether, as a restaurant, so Juliette, whether you are free to select any food supplier that you like to be delivered via Collectiv Food, or whether you're slightly limited to the suppliers that Jérémy's using.
Actually, as of now, we have many suppliers, but I do tend to favor, sorry, it's been a long time, to favor the suppliers that are actually more, what is the word? I'm looking for it, but that have a more nowadays approach to it, that have innovative solutions, so that it's not limited to the product itself. And I think Collectiv Food is quite young still in France, and so is still building its supplier network. And as they're going to add producers to their network, it's going to be more and more interesting to diversify the families of products, the typology of products that we do get through them. As you get the transparency and the story of the product, and you know more about the logistic because you actually see the bike in front of your restaurant. And so this is how you change more and more, and this is how you get better more and more.
Anybody else? Yes, thank you.
Hello, I had a question because I pictured quite well the model for the city part of the logistic, but with your producers, do you try to also reduce the carbon footprint? Have you put a system in place with your producers, and therefore do you choose to eliminate products that aren't produced locally at all, like for example chocolate, vanilla, or things like that? And if I can, a question for Juliette as well. How do you valorize the storytelling of the producers with your clients? Do they ask for information about it, or?
So a few answers to your question. So we haven't really focused yet on the inbound. So we call the inbound our producers to our warehouse. We start consolidating some of the collection of the goods in different areas where we have an aggregation of producers, and then we take care of the logistics. But it's mainly for now still producers that would deliver pallets, on the daily basis to our warehouse. It's definitely an area where we can do a lot of things in the future. But I say not yet, because we don't measure anything on that leg of the journey yet. In terms of like excluding some products, I think our approach has been always like of not being political. It's more about making the data available and helping Juliette or other customers make informed decisions. So it's really about, okay, I've been using USDA beef because I'm a smoking smokehouse in London. That's the huge impact it has actually on the environment, and I have data proof behind that. And they're suggesting other options which are Irish or Scottish, more locally sourced, which could be as good for my cuisine. Okay, I'm going to try and ask for samples. So I think that's kind of the stance we're taking. We're trying to impact what we're in control, and otherwise we're conscious that it's a massive industry, it takes time, inertia to change. So we're more into the education side of things and sharing the data for them to make better decisions over time.
From the restaurant point of view, I think it's quite hard to. You're never perfect in this area because sourcing products is so hard, and you are limited by your terroir. What we do with Capucine is we've decided that up to 95% of our sourcing would be French, and then you have things that, for example, we are a Californian restaurant. We have an avocado toast at lunch, but we have it in the winter when we can source avocado from Sicilia and not Peru. And this is small things like that where you do try to find an alternative that is enable you to strengthen your brand and the way you communicate to clients and what they want and what they expect when they come in your restaurants. But if it means making a bad choice in terms of ecologically, actually, then you're trying to find alternatives. But as of now, I'm not sure there's one restaurant that can source 100% French products. I find it very, very hard. In terms of nuts, in terms of a few things, it's pretty complicated.
Thank you. So I will keep my last question because I wanted to ask. So Jérémy, you've raised 16 million. So it's like a startup that is interesting, which shows that investors are interested in this kind of business model. What are you going to do with your 16 millions? What are you going to improve in the system? And that will be my last question.
Just so you know, I was before the talk, I was telling her, let's not talk about the money. It's not the most important. It's actually what we do with it. So I totally agree. I think to your point, I think it shows that there is, it's food. It's here to stay. Even more important since COVID, I think there is a huge amount of interest and investment into innovative models that can really transform and impact the planet. So that's great. I think where it goes mainly to the team, to the people, to brains, trying to be innovative and passionate. So we're going to keep our R&D, bringing ideas and new models like that to life. We're going to expand to new cities, to new geographies, and trying to have an even bigger impact basically on the planet. The more customers we have, the more producers we work with, the more cities we operate in, the more we have an impact overall on the planet. So it's for the better.
Can you say how many customers you have already?
Hundreds of commercial kitchens.
Hundreds.
Yeah. And we're aiming for thousands, millions, we'll see.
Olympic Games is going to help. All right, let's give them a big round of applause. Thank you.